Okay, we are back, and at this point, we kind of took care of the topic of rep shunning as I wanted to discuss it. So that's something we can kind of put behind us, I think, at this point. But I wanted to just throw out one last thing about faction rep, and that's sort of its fundamental nature, and I probably should have brought this up at the very outset. But I'd really kind of pictured this as being how much any group likes or dislikes you. And that's really what it's all about. That could be an NPC group, potentially a player group, though some thought would have to kind of go into how that would be handled. Now I want to move on past that and talk about what I'm, at least for now, tentatively calling the job completion score. And really, this is just sort of a score for how well you complete your job, or how often you actually do what you say you're going to do. Scoring for successful completion.
Is it worth even hiring you to do the job?
Exactly. And the reason I kind of came up with this idea is, you know, if I'm hiring somebody, I may or may not really care who they've got their reputation with. I don't care if they're working for company X or company Y or company Z, but I do need to know, can they get the job done? And so it seemed to make sense to pull this out and make it completely separate from faction reputation, but give us some sort of means to know how often this person does the jobs they say they're going to do. So it's independent of faction rep.
Well, I think it's more that it's dependent on it, as much as anything on. I don't know. It's tied in. The two are tied together.
Sure.
I think more as this is a sort of an aggregate. This goes into your faction rep and your personal rep, and looks at specific aspects of it to give you your job completion score, rather than taking into account who it's for. So I'm really doing a bad job of explaining what I mean there. There is interconnection there, I think.
Well, I mean, yes, of course, the jobs that you do are going to affect both your faction reputation, potentially if they're for a particular faction, and they're going to affect your job completion score. That doesn't necessarily mean that there is a relationship between the two numbers.
Now, what about you, Nelson? A second ago, you made an interesting little noise.
Well, it kind of did, actually. He did kind of resolve what I was going to say. Because I was going to suggest that job completion score be... Because we've talked about faction rep and how there could be different kinds of reputation for a faction. Mm-hmm. There could be, the trusted reputation or the job completion reputation for a particular faction. But then the direction you want to take this is independent of what factions you did jobs for.
Again, just to throw it out there, the way I had originally envisioned this is that faction rep is really just a measurement of how much a group likes or hates you. Period.
But we kind of did talk about...
I know we did.
So then what I was going to suggest is job completion score would just be another type of reputation you can get with the faction. But the more I think about it, independent of particular factions does kind of make more sense.
You're envisaging this more as an aid to the player in finding other players to do things, I guess. Zach is, I mean.
Go ahead, Nelson.
Well, I think it'd be cool if job completion score, if the higher score, the more rewards you get. So not only are people punished for not completing jobs, as in they get fewer rewards and fewer opportunities, but they're also rewarded because a corporation is obviously going to pay more to a person if they know that person has a higher likelihood of actually completing that job.
Sure.
That makes
No,
sense.
I see what you're saying. Absolutely. The reason I had wanted them to be independent of one another is that I don't necessarily think that your faction reputation is always going to be attached to quests. If you do a whole bunch of quests for faction X, some major company, and you get your reputation really high up in the air with them, and they really, really trust you. But then not even on a mission, but just, because it's entertaining. you do go in there and you fire your rocket launcher into their headquarters over and over again, that should have a reputation effect. It has nothing to do with whether or not you get the job done. Every time they hire you, you get the job done. You are their go-to guy, but apparently you're a little unstable. So the two have to be kind of separate from one another.
No, that does make sense. Do you think this is? You think of this in terms of also a sort of one aspect of it, which is almost a job efficiency? How could be how quickly you can. If it's a timed mission, somebody needs something in a hurry. Do you get more job completion rep for doing it like instantaneously as opposed to just within the time limit?
I'd be a little worried about doing that. Maybe it's really dependent on a lot of factors. I mean, if
you want to be? I guess what I'm saying. Did you want this to be a fairly sort of vanilla, just a very basic aggregation of they've done this many jobs and this many were successful?
Yes.
There you are.
Yes, exactly. That's really what I had in mind. And the more granularity you add, the more you actually pull it back over to the faction rep system. Now, all of the information you're talking about, I think, could easily be broken down in an automatically generated resume. But this information, this job completion score, like if you could picture this resume in the game, like if it was like a standard piece of A4 paper, it'd have their name, maybe the character's photo and everything. But their job completion score should be like a great big number up in the corner, and that should jump out at you and be one of the more prominent features, because that's really what it's about. When this person takes jobs, they generally get them done or they generally don't. And if you've kind of screwed yourself over by failing some jobs, you may need to start, kind of building your credit score back up, so to speak. You got to get out there and start doing some jobs and build that back up.
This ties back into one of the very first things we talked about in my overly long rant about levels. But you did bring up the idea of it being a good way to gauge the people around you. It was a number that you could and this seems to be the way the job completion score would actually be. It sounds like what
even for accepting somebody into a guild,
that key number that you would look at rather than
you wanted to look at a virtual CV. You could look at that virtual CV could automatically contain their job completion score, their faction reps, etc., and then guild leaders. I'm just using guild, of course, just as a commonly known name. But if a guild leader took a look at it, they could use that information to make a decision if you'd be worth bringing on or not. Well, he's got an outstanding completion score for jobs, and he's got rep with these different factions that could be very, very useful to us. Let's give him the job. Let's bring him on board.
Would it be helpful, I'm just throwing this out here, but to break it down slightly in terms of the sort of the major categories of job type?
I wouldn't.
Because
Nelson, did you spring a leak?
To separate sort of hack and slash experts from.
Go ahead, Nelson.
I like keeping it simple. I really like keeping it simple.
Yeah, I do too, though if you needed that kind of differentiation, something you could do is take the more complicated... this doesn't have to be a percentile-based thing. It could actually be a score with a number, 8,222 or something like that, where certain types of quests, if you know that they are inherently more difficult, or they inherently require more activity from the player than, say, something where you could accept like a delivery quest, where you could actually accept a quest, flip over to the market tab, purchase whatever it is you needed, flip right back over to the quest tab, and without ever moving, you just completed that quest. Sure, that should be a positive effect on your job completion score. But should it be as much of an effect as, you accepting a quest where you've got to raid this space station and go kill the guy in charge, steal this thing, and then get out in one piece?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I was thinking in more of a qualitative rather than quantitative breaking apart, because in the example of if you need a DPS for your group to go and do something, then if you look at someone's job, they might have the most amazing job completion score, but be a cleric.
Oh, of course, it's not the only thing.
But this is what I'm saying. Did you want some sort of very, very rough divisions into.
I've actually
in
an
that
upcoming
WoW paradigm of DPS and tank and so forth.
An upcoming section that I mentioned early on when we first started talking about reputation was player-to-player reputation. And in my mind, that's where that would be handled. Because you're going to get this person in on your group, and then based on how well they do during your raid, if you want to call it that, whatever task that your group has set out to do, you can leave them some feedback that actually says they're a great DPS, very easy to work with, took direction very well.
But then I kind of feel that...
But that's not the job completion score.
Well, see, it kind of makes it feel slightly redundant to me, because I can't think of a situation where you're going to want to know how good someone is at something without wanting to know how good they are at the particular thing you want them to do, rather than just generally how good they are.
All I see is this as a mechanic for NPC jobs. That's just how I take it.
It very well could be.
It's just a way to the benefit of this metric is it's going to encourage people to finish jobs, and it's going to discourage people from not finishing jobs. But my point is this could easily be used to do. I'm repeating myself. This could be the way that people are forced to think hard about what quests they're taking, what priority they give them.
I have no problem with any of that, but Zach's talking about, like when he showed the sheet of A4 with a huge, this is he's talking about being a big important thing to look at when you're dealing player to player. And
I think in reference, if you are putting a job, if you are wanting to subcontract a job out, and you're looking at people who have said, I would like to do this quest for you, you're going to pick the people with a good job completion rate. And you're going to say no to people. That is assuming that you get to choose.
I will stand corrected on that. But it was just I wanted to bring it up because I can kind of see where you're going. I think it'll make more sense to me once we've...
Well, there's a logical jump to what NATO actually just said. At some point... you're going to look at somebody's job completion score, and let's say it just happens to be really high. I don't know what really high is in this context, but let's just say you look at it and go, like, damn, he's got a really high job completion score. And this guy comes to you and says, I can do your job. His high score lends him, no matter what he's good at, lends him a certain set of credibility because you see on paper that he is generally known for doing what he says he's going to do. Combine that with the fact that he just said he was going to do your job, and logically, you now feel more comfortable.
Right, regardless because he's not going to, if he's maintained a high
he does what he says he'll do. So, I hadn't really thought of it from that way.
Yeah, he's not going to say he can do a healing job if he's a DPSer.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool.
Hey, we'll even write that out. Score relates to doing... Oh, wait, thank you. What you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
But I still really would like to see this be used in relation to NPC quests.
No reason why it couldn't be.
And to have
that's how you build it up. That's the way you do it.
The most important thing is to have an actually not like unfair, but a significant enough benefit to you to have that high completion score, a significantly more amounts of experience that you get for completing that job if you have a high completion score. And the way to justify it is really easy because an NPC is obviously going to pay you more if they know you're going to do it.
Or offer you more sensitive jobs.
Yeah, they probably got access to... It's probably more access than it is...
Yeah, pay.
Or if you want to introduce the sort of the carrot to in terms of pay, you might get more carefully considered. If it's objects rather than just cash in hand.
I also go back to Eve.
Generic, expensive object. You might get if you've got a good job completion score, then the NPC's AI will look at you and go, "Oh, you do this type of mission mostly. Therefore, I'll give you, you're an assassin. I'll give you a +1 blow pipe rather than a big axe that would be of no use to you and you're just going to go and sell.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm more like the way Eve does it, which is here's going to be your job. You've obviously have done enough to warrant this kind of job, so I think you can get it done. And if you get it done for me in the next 2 hours, I'm going to give you a cash bonus of blah and possibly something else. Those are like the bane of my existence. They do an awesome job of forcing me to stay on the damn computer when I want to get off because I'm like, yeah, you got 50,000 extra isks. All right, fine, I'll do it. Next thing you know, they've managed to suck me in for another 2 hours to knock this damn quest out, where I would have just accepted it if it was WoW and logged off.
Yeah. And Gavin, just to come back, I realize you were already kind of sold on the idea, but just to kind of bring it all back home, if that resume that was auto-generated had some sort of breakdown as the types of quests that somebody is more prone to taking, combined with a high job completion score, I think you could rest assured that they could get that particular type of job done.
And it also ties back into the skill level of information finding that we were talking about earlier.
Sure.
You know, perhaps at a certain level, you only get to see that big number, and that's all you get to find out about someone.
Like the ability to perform a background check.
Yeah. And then further into that, you get to get.
Well, and somebody that has high enough levels where they can actually do background checks. Let's just use that as an example. Then has a marketable skill.
Yeah.
That they could market on the job board.
There's one thing on this that you mentioned in passing that I just want to sort of jump on and underline, which is because you said it doesn't necessarily have to be percentage based; it could be just a number.
Sure.
And actually, I think a key thing with this would be to tie it very directly, almost as just a straightforward multiplier on the level that you're working at. So early in the game, obviously, the quests, in the same way that money is always dealt with and experience is always dealt with in traditional role-playing games, you get more for higher level ones. So rather than just seeing, say, a 92% job completion, by having it be, you know, you'd look at it and see it's 92 and go, all right, then he's obviously not been playing for long, but he's good at what he does, or he's been playing for a long time but doesn't, and you're not quite sure. But when you start to see someone with a score of 920, then you start to be able to say, oh, well, they're obviously good at what they do, and they're of a sufficiently high level.
Sure.
And it's all wrapped up in that one number, but it does leave some room for, if you like, the player to make the wrong choice. I like the idea of giving them enough rope to hang themselves, almost.
Well, especially if you had the ability,
really high level who's ganking people,
sure,
and not completing jobs.
Well, especially if you had the ability to compare someone's job completion score against like the server mean.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nelson.
Well, there's things from both sides of the argument. I really do like the percentage. But like Gavin said, that's irrelevant. If you've only played 3 missions and you completed all 3 of them, you get 100% job completion score. And if you played for 2,000 missions and you've completed 1,999 of them, you only get a 98% job completion score.
There's no reason why you can't display both.
There has to be a way to correlate how many quests that you've actually taken.
Yeah, just do it just like on eBay.
Yeah.
Because eBay, I can see a score, and I can also see over the past, how many they've done.
Yeah,
and passed and failed.
I think that would be the best way to handle it.
So if somebody didn't have 100%, they had something like, 97%, so it's like, oh, they failed some. But then you look over here and you see that they've done 10,336 quests. You're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 numbers, but
it could. Well, I'm just thinking, score in the general sense. However, it actually ends up getting handled is beside the point of the actual concept, as far as I'm concerned.
But I think that is a very important consideration, though.
Sure. No, I think and I think in the end we will have that. You'll have a big number you can look at, and then I think that you should be able to at least find out how many quests have they actually completed, and how many have they actually failed. I mean, you could make a determination just immediately just from that. This person obviously completes all of his quests, or he only completes half his quests. He seems to be kind of lazy. But again, coming back to the very specifics on the numbers, Yeah, we'll do that later.
Yeah, even the ability to break it down. Well, they've only got like a 57%, but they've done 800 quests. And over the last 3 months, it's been 100%.
Exactly.
You just can't bring it up that high. Then you can start making judgments based on their character. Be like, well, they've apparently really started paying attention to their quests now,
or sold their account to someone else who cares.
Exactly. But that does kind of stick with you. So that's everything I had to discuss on the matter. We just hit the 20-minute mark, so I think this is a really good spot to call the video.
Alrighty, and thank you very much.